This is from Louis at Malaria No More. He says, we released a report recently that showed cutting malaria can lead to a GDP boost of nearly $127 billion for malaria endemic countries. Given the importance of foreign policy issues to this Labour government, which we've discussed a lot, and their ambition for greater global security, how important do you think international development will be in building closer partnerships with countries around the world and Africa in particular? Who wants to come in first on that one?
I think we should get the fundamentals clear first. Labour are not going to increase aid from 0.5% of GDP to 0.7 in the short term. They said they want to do it in the long term, but they're not there yet. Same goes with...
Which it was obviously before, and then it was reduced.
Yeah,
and yeah.
Exactly. Same goes with the FCDO merger, which was the merger between the International Development Office and the Foreign Office. This was something that happened under Boris Johnson. It's been a bit of a disaster. There was huge questions over bringing the two IT systems together. It's something that's become so knotted and nitty. I don't think they want to prise it apart again. So that's probably not going to change in the short term. I think what has changed is that there is this recognition that international aid and international development will be essential to foreign policy, in particular with Africa. David Lammy, the Foreign Secretary, has spoken so much about re-engaging developing countries. He doesn't want to sort of adopt this patronising or condescending tone. He wants to engage with them as equal partners. And I think foreign aid will play a big part in that. We're not going to get this huge injection of money. We did have this £84 million from Keir Starmer, which he announced at the European political community to try and stop the push factors of immigration. So that was poverty reduction programs in the Middle East and Africa. You don't need me to tell you, Hannah, that £84 million is nothing. It's barely worth being announced. So I don't think you're going to have a big shift in that. You are going to get a focus and a sort of rhetorical emphasis placed on it, but the money will have to wait.
George, will this Labour government look towards Africa at all?
Yes, I mean, as Freddie says, rebuilding, improving relations with the global south is a huge priority for David Lammy. He's well aware of the animosity that the West's vaccine hoarding during COVID built, and of how strategically important it is, actually, given how China is seeking to court the global south through the Belt and Road program. On international developments, yes, they're not looking for a big bang on this issue. And again, there's a political tension here, which is that international development spending, very popular in the policy world, very popular amongst NGOs and amongst liberals and progressives, because obviously it's critical to the world's poorest people. Among the public, it's about the least popular public spending you get. So that's another tension where if at some point they would want a step change in funding, you have to build the political consensus around it, which I think the last Labour government did very effectively. And you had the landmark G8 summit in 2005, and Bob Geldof and so on. But you'd need, I think, a similar coalition of support, because international development has really fallen down the political agenda.
Yeah, and I mean, Freddie mentioned that the merger between the Foreign Office and Department of International Development hasn't gone terribly well. But actually, Louis' question sort of hints that they are linked, aren't they? In the abstract, it's not an awful idea to for one to subsume the other, is it?
Exactly. I mean, David Lammy certainly sees international development as a crucial tool of foreign policy. And there's one thing Keir Starmer's government has avoided, actually. They haven't looked to really create new departments, or they haven't gone for a big Whitehall reorganisation. They're actually working largely with the existing institutions, but doing new things such as the mission boards and so on. So it's a different approach to past governments.
And now for something completely different. This is from Brendan. Brendan, we can only assume you're talking about GB News. You haven't mentioned it by name, but your question is, if a small group of businessmen are prepared to lose tens of millions of pounds to fund a TV channel which promotes one political party, should those losses be considered as donations to that party and be declared accordingly? So we're going to assume this is GB News. I mean, I would kick us off by saying you could question whether it's one political party, although they were at the time Conservative MPs presenting, which is incredibly bizarre, and unbelievably Ofcom have let them get away with that for a long time, but also very pro-reform. So I'm assuming we're talking about the Conservative Party here, because I wouldn't say it is just pro-one party. But
I think the answer is definitely no, in part because these TV channels are regulated by Ofcom, even if you don't think they're regulated very well. They are, and also they do have a plurality of views. You do get different people on GB News.
It's Glassman.
Exactly.
Labour peer.
Former Labour MP Gloria Depier.
Exactly.
And you've had senior Labour politicians go on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so I don't think it is a donation as such, and also I think you get into broader questions about free speech and whether people are able to create new media products in whatever way that they like, and that's something as well that's quite important.
I mean, one interesting thing is quite a lot of GB News viewers, according to polling, actually vote Labour.
It's really interesting.
In fact, the only right-wing paper with more Conservative readers than Labour readers was the Daily Mail. There is an argument that actually, GB News is a problem for the Conservatives because it drags them towards the right of focusing on cultural wars, and that's actually a distraction from maybe some of the more bread and butter issues. There are Labour politicians who see a chance to use it, to promote, for instance, populist policies such as rail renationalisation, public ownership of energy, that are popular with GB News viewers. So I think I wouldn't see its sort of political impact as solely in one direction. I think it had sort of a variety of effects.
No, and actually, as you said, it's also a platform for Labour MPs and or Labour adjacent people to put their views to perhaps a different audience than they otherwise might